All right, Pura Vida from Costa Rica. This is Dr. Jeff. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Rythmia Life Advancement Center, and I'm doing this Facebook Live to talk a little bit about dissociation and how you can plug back into yourself through plant medicine as a strategy. So I want to talk a little bit about what dissociation is and just define that for you guys. So dissociation is a tool that we have to actually survive in our lives. And there's mild versions of dissociation, and then there's really extreme versions that happen because of trauma and other things. So dissociation is a separation of your physical self from your emotional or spiritual self. And so if you think about, like, why would I want to be separated from my physical self in an emotional or spiritual way? Well, there's evolutionary reasons why, there's fight or flight reasons why, there's self-preservation mechanisms that we have as human beings to do this. And it's actually a very powerful tool. However, if we get locked into a dissociative state, that can be really problematic. So dissociation that's in a mild sense is, let's say, you're driving to work every day. It's your same traffic, your same road, and it takes you an hour to get to work. I grew up in LA, so it takes us an hour and a half or two to get to work. So I'm driving to work, and all of a sudden I'm just at work, and I'm thinking, like, wow, I don't even remember the drive. Like I wasn't really paying attention, and I'm suddenly at work. That would be a mild dissociation where I separated from myself just temporarily to not be flooded with all the traffic in the cars and not get stressed out. And maybe my mind was elsewhere because I was listening to the music or thinking about the patients I was going to see that day. So that would be considered mild dissociation. So it's a mechanism so that we don't get flooded with stimuli in our environment. Because if we were absorbing every single bit of stimuli that was coming at us, we'd be overwhelmed. And it would just be like too much data. So there's an internal mechanism that we have as humans in our brain that we can kind of like unplug and just kind of get through certain situations. So an extreme version of dissociation would be soldiers that go to war. So if I'm going to go to war and I'm a soldier, I don't want to have my emotions present with me, because if my emotions are connected to my physical actions, I'm super scared. I have possibly empathy for the people I'm fighting. I'm nervous. I won't be able to follow commands very well. I'll be thinking for myself. And so what happens in a wartime scenario is that a soldier will unplug in a really strong manner from their emotions and from their spiritual self, and they'll act behaviorally. So that would be an extreme version of dissociation. So there's all these different versions that we go through in our day, and it's just part of life. So what happens is when somebody has trauma and what leads to PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, what happens is the trauma or the event that they experienced, whether it's abuse, victimization, soldiers have this from war, it could be neglect, all kinds of things that people go through. What happens is, if it's an ongoing theme, people become dissociated, and it kind of sticks like that. And so our physical self is separated from our emotional or spiritual self when we get kind of locked in that sort of position. And what happens with soldiers is, after they go to war, they dissociate and they do their tour duty, and then they come back and they're supposed to, in theory, reconnect back with themselves, but that doesn't always happen. And they come home and they're sort of numb, and they're not connected to themselves. They can't connect with other people. Everyone thinks they're different. People think they're weird. And then substance abuse kicks in, because that's a way that temporarily people can kind of like feel like they're plugged back in sort of superficially. So the dangers of trauma and being dissociated in sort of a theme is that if you're not plugged into your emotions and you're not plugged into your physical self, and your spiritual self are not connected, it's hard to make decisions. It's hard to have success in life. It's hard to have things go in a way that's beneficial for you. And it's actually really frustrating. So PTSD is not reserved only for soldiers. It can happen to anybody. Anybody has a car accident, anybody that has the death of a loved one, anybody that has been abused, anybody that's in a domestic violence situation, anybody that, you know, drugs and alcohol are ways that people try to reconnect with themselves in a sort of a subconscious way. That's kind of what they're trying to do. But addiction causes trauma. So there's all these things that we go through. And if we get locked into a state where we are separated from our spiritual and our physical self, are sort of like on this different sort of plane, we are not happy, and we're not feeling like we can connect with other people. So a lot of the guests that come to Rythmia are in this sort of state. And, you know, there's different extreme versions of this. Some people more mildly dissociated. But what a lot of the people have in common is that they're going through something hard in life, and they feel like they're not connected to what's happening. And they feel that they've lost their emotions, and they feel they've lost their purpose and what they want to do with their life. And so dissociation can happen. This kind of detachment from self can happen in childhood. It can happen anytime in adulthood. And what you want to do is you want to notice, like, okay, am I feeling sort of numb? Am I just kind of like going through the motions behaviorally? Am I not connected to like what I'm doing emotionally or spiritually? And that would be some signs and symptoms that you're probably dissociated. So there's a lot of techniques that are out there to kind of re-plug in back to yourself. One of them is trauma therapy. Now, we all know that therapy takes a long time. From my last Facebook Live, it takes a long time to do therapy, and it takes a long time to build trust with a therapist. But what happens is, you know, if you can work on processing the trauma and kind of working through the fear and the problems that you're having as a result of these dissociative identity issues, you can kind of slowly get back together. But what I want to talk about in this webinar is I want to talk about how this can occur with plant medicine very quickly. So the problem with being dissociated is, if you're, for example, I'll use the soldier example again. So soldiers, when they're behaving out on the battlefield, they're shooting and killing and getting shot at and getting wounded, and they're seeing all kinds of crazy stuff. Their emotions are not present there. Then their war is over, and if they try to connect with themselves again, what happens is all those emotions come flooding out, and it's really, really scary. Because if I went through, you know, 3 or 4 years of wartime scenarios, I got 3 or 4 years of emotions that are really traumatic that I never really dealt with. And so if I try to plug back in through therapy or any sort of methods that the West we use, it's scary. So what people tend to do is they back away from that, and they say, no way, man, I'm not going to do that. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but in the addiction community, in the addiction recovery world, the old school model is to not even look at the trauma. It's like, forget about it. It's too triggering. It's too scary. It's too upsetting. You're just going to relapse. So let's not look at your history. Let's not look at your trauma. Let's not look at these unresolved emotions. Let's look at just right now, behaviorally, in a cognitive behavioral model. Let's look at what you need to do now. Now, for me, that is not a great way to do things. It's a great way to stay sober for a bit, but the problem is that you kind of white knuckle your recovery, meaning you're just kind of holding on, barely surviving, and that's no way to live. The way to live is to have centered peace, calm, have resolve, work through issues, not have like you feel like you're carrying a ton of bricks on your back. That's more of a recovery model. It's more of a therapeutic model. So in my opinion, what's best is to deal with these emotions of the past in a way that's safe, in a way that's in a way that you can do it with people that you trust. You can do it with yourself, and there's strategies to do that. Now at Rythmia, what we're doing is we're using plant medicine to deal with dissociation in a really safe environment that's medically licensed. We're using plant medicine as a way to connect with yourself, resolve trauma, and reconnect with all the things that have happened in the past, and you can just let them go. And it's actually really incredible because, you know, a lot of these strategies that exist out there for PTSD and for dissociative identity disorders and all these sort of labels that people get put on them, what happens is there's not a lot of success in that area, and it's a long, drawn-out process that's really risky. And so plant medicine is a beautiful way to approach dissociative issues and to really connect with yourself in a way that's safe. So what I want to talk about briefly here for you guys is what is plant medicine even doing? Well, it's doing a lot of things. One of the main things that it's doing, especially for those that are dissociated, is it's reuniting you with your soul. It's helping you realize really who you are and get back to the core self. So we all know that life is really stressful. We all have to survive. We have to go to work. Sometimes we don't like our jobs. We're in relationships maybe that we're not totally on board with. And some of us have really bad things happen to us. And so what happens is, and to survive that, we just get through it by unplugging from ourselves a bit and just kind of like going on cruise control. And so eventually, if that's an ongoing theme for us, what ends up happening is we just don't really know who we are anymore. We don't really know what we want. We don't know how to make good decisions for ourselves. And we just basically feel lost. So the beauty of plant medicine is that it helps you reconnect with yourself. It helps you become grounded. And it helps you plug in back to who you really are. And the way I like to explain it, now this is my own definition. I didn't have a shaman tell me this, and I didn't have any other people tell me this. This is my own perception and my own belief about what goes on with plant medicine from my own experiences and working with thousands of people that have done it. So your physical body is vibrating at a certain frequency. Your emotional or spiritual self is also vibrating at a certain frequency. Now what happens is your spiritual self is a perfect sort of state. It's all-knowing, it's clear, it's connected to what it is. So that vibrational frequency is like the true you, your soul, your emotional self, your spiritual self. Your physical self, because you're a human being, has been going through a lot. Maybe you haven't been eating so well. Maybe you're not getting enough sleep. Maybe you're stressed out. Maybe you have a drug or alcohol issue. You're living in LA where there's a lot of smog. You're breathing in things. You're drinking water that's not good. Okay, so your physical self is vibrating at a sort of a less than optimal range. And if you have your spiritual self vibrating in a certain range and your physical self vibrating in a different range, they're not connected. And they kind of have this disconnect that's confusing, and you're not united with yourself. So what happens is when you take plant medicine, your physical body begins to vibrate at the frequency of your spiritual self or your emotional self. And so what happens is those two parts of you unite and they become one again, and they're connected. And it's that process that allows you to see and to feel and to understand who you are and what you want to do, and you feel resolved and you feel grounded and you feel connected, and it's a beautiful, beautiful process. So there's other ways to do that. There's all the therapy. You can spend 10 years in therapy. You can take a bunch of antidepressant medication, which keeps you numb. You can get through life in a way that's not pleasant. You can white knuckle your addiction recovery, or you can choose to take plant medicine, allow your physical body to connect with your spiritual and emotional self and become grounded and centered, and then you can have clarity. This clarity is very healing. You be able to develop new neuron pathways that have clear connections to peace and to understanding of yourself. And we all know that when you're connected to yourself, you can connect to other people. So if you felt that you can't really connect to other people, the reason very likely is because you're just not connected to yourself. So plant medicine really helps that process. PTSD is one of the most amazing processes that we have being healed here at Rythmia. There's a lot of research that shows that trauma is resolved through plant medicine. And if you guys look at the internet and check out some studies there, you'll see that there's a lot of really good research that's showing this is the case. So some people are really afraid to do this work for good reason. It's totally understandable. You know, they have a history of trauma and really hard things. But I am going to tell you that I know for an absolute fact that if you face your fears and face these emotions that you have not resolved, it will not be as horrific or scary as you're thinking it's going to be. Your subconscious brain has no reason to hold on to bits and pieces of trauma from the past that are not relevant for now. So if you feel that you're dissociated, you feel that you're unplugged from yourself, and you're kind of just going through the motions in life, come to Rythmia, reconnect with your soul, reconnect with your spiritual and emotional self, and be able to move forward in a really positive, productive manner that sticks. That's what I love about this. It sticks. And you can process and get rid of all this baggage. So I look forward to seeing you down here. I'm really excited about this work. You know, we have a lot of soldiers, a lot of veterans. We have a lot of people that have a history of trauma. And you name it, we've had it here. And it's all gone very well. And people are amazed. And I'm amazed as a person that's worked with clients for years, especially people in trauma. I'm amazed at the results we're getting. We have upwards of 90+% of people that are resolving their trauma here. So this is the real deal, you guys. This is like no joke. Come here, stay for a week, get this knocked out, and move forward in your life and be happy. I look forward to meeting you. I'll see you soon. Pura vida from Costa Rica.